Hey, welcome back. Today we've got another really good episode to dive into with Paper Hearts, episode 10 of season 4. Paper Hearts debuted December 15th, 1996, and follows Mulder as he confronts a serial killer who claims Samantha was one of his victims. The episode begins as Mulder is awakened by some sentient red light, and one of the jauntiest tunes I've ever heard on the show. With how upbeat and cheerful this music is, I can only assume this episode will be upbeat too. Well, it kinda was until Mulder found a random dead little girl in the middle of the woods who gets swallowed by the earth. This all seems like the work of one Frederick J. Krueger. Anyways, Mulder wakes up, and because a dream can't just be a dream to Mulder, he heads to the park from his dream, and the following morning has a team out there digging. And you know, this isn't the first time the X-Files began with a dream and digging out in the middle of nowhere. Scully joins in on the festivities, wondering what Mulder is doing out here, and then he tells her it was all because of a dream. You know, I can feel the eye rolling going on in the back of her head.
Sir!
Alright, so maybe there was something to this dream of his, but the fact he knew the exact spot where a body was buried is a bit suspicious. Mulder explains to Scully he's been having these strange dreams lately, and the latest led him right to this little girl. He also seems to know exactly how she died and who killed her.
John Lee Roche killed 13 8 to 10-year-old girls.
Alright, so we have a serial killer on our hands that Mulder seems to be quite familiar with. But is he an X-File? I don't really think it matters because he's a sick little girl killing motherfucker who takes heart-shaped cutouts from their pajamas as trophies. And this is where we bring in the good old reliable Mr. Woodchipper. Mulder was brought on the original case by his former living partner Reggie. Because remember, Mulder is supposed to be a very good criminal profiler, not just someone who wrestles with stretchy guys who are naked.
I concluded that we were probably looking for a salesman, someone who traveled around a lot, someone who could gain people's confidence, someone ordinary.
Roche was a traveling vacuum cleaner salesman that would use his job as a way to scope out potential victims. Couldn't he just be a normal traveling salesman and sleep with the lonely housewives instead? With Mulder's expert insights, they did catch him, but the thing that always bothered Mulder was even though Roche confessed to 13 victims, they never found his 13 trophies, the Paper Hearts. This latest uncovered body, however, makes victim number 14, so who knows how many more could be out there.
You said it yourself once. You said that a dream is an answer to a question we haven't learned how to ask.
Well, I've often felt that dreams are answers to questions we haven't yet figured out how to ask.
The latest discovered victim appears to have been a young girl who went missing in 1975. 4 years earlier than Mulder had thought Roche's killings had begun. He could have been doing this for decades, and there could be so many more missing little girls out there.
Frank Sparks?
Can I help you?
Yes, I'm Agent Scully. This is Agent Mulder. We're with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. May we speak with you?
You found Daddy.
Look, I don't care how long it's been, but just imagine how it must feel to tell a parent that you found their murdered child. Just the father saying you found Addie sends a chill down my spine. This scene is just so hard to watch. You feel so awful. The poor man's wife died the year prior, and now he discovers his child was murdered some 20 years ago. He does say something that triggers Mulder when he mentions the idea of more victims. Mulder sees a quick flash of Roche's car, a white El Camino, and thinks because he was a traveling salesman that the hearts may be inside the car itself. You would think they would have already thought to search there though.
Don't you think the car might have been searched at least once already?
See? Me and Scully are just always on the same wavelength. The agents find the new owner of the car, and he seems really excited that the previous owner was a serial killer. Can I ask why people get so crazy over serial killers? They're some of the most horrific people to ever exist, yet you can buy merchandise with their faces on it.
16-year-old Eva is obsessed with Richard Ramirez. She says she writes him every day, and he writes back.
The guy just had his car detailed, so Mulder figures, hey, that means I can just slice into his seats. He won't mind. Mulder thinks something must be wrong because their 10-second search yields no results. He then sees another flash with the words Mad Hat, and like the world's greatest detective, figures it must have something to do with the camper shell. And just like that, he finds the Paper Hearts. Except there are 16 of them. So they decide to pay Mr. Roche a little visit. Can I ask why a child murderer is allowed to shoot hoops? Wouldn't a firing squad be more appropriate? Roche is a fucking monster. When they tell him they found his paper hearts, his reaction is like, oh, anyways. The agents want to know about the other victims, and Roche makes them an offer. They return to him his hearts, and he'll tell them everything they want to know.
Trust a child molester?
Where's that goddamn firing squad? Mulder has another dream, back to the night his sister was abducted by the aliens, except instead of the aliens, it's Roche. So either his dreams are trying to tell him something, or he's really letting this case get to him. But man, Roche is one creepy bastard.
Where were you in 1973?
What, the whole year?
November. 27th of November.
The following day, Mulder meets with Roche so he can give him the hearts, but not before questioning where he was the night of Samantha's abduction. Before Roche even enters the room, you can feel the anxiety and stress Mulder is under, because he's now suspecting that Roche was the one that took his sister and not the aliens. Roche claims he sold Mulder's father a vacuum around the time of his sister's disappearance, but won't say much beyond that without the hearts.
You bring me my hearts, and maybe I'll tell you more.
Can anyone blame Mulder? I mean, if it were me, I'd be giving him the old Kevin Randleman suplex. Roche tries complaining to one of the guards, but the guard is way too based, because he says he didn't see a thing. Little Miss Scully, on the other hand, is like, I saw it. I feel like Scully would be the kid in the class who's like, excuse me, teacher, you forgot to assign us homework. Scully tells Mulder that Roche had been allowed access to the internet recently, and that's likely how he was able to find this information out about him. But why is a child murderer / molester allowed access to the internet where there are videos and pictures of children?
Scully, do you believe that my sister Samantha was abducted by aliens? No. So what do you think happened to her?
I do like how Mulder turns this around on her, because she's going on about how Mulder is letting this case get to him. Yet in a normal situation, it's much more likely his sister was taken by a serial killer than men from beyond the moon. Mulder decides to wake his mother up at home while digging through her things in the middle of the night. She was just enjoying a nice sleep, but no, let's traumatize her by bringing up the vacuum his father bought some 20 years prior.
I've been denied further access to John Lee Roche. I'm told that order comes down from you.
Could you tell me why you saw fit to strike a prisoner in federal custody?
Yeah, maybe because he's a child predator? Luckily, Scully didn't snitch, but someone sure the hell did. With the timelines of Samantha's abduction and Roche being in town crossing paths, Skinner does allow Mulder to continue his investigation, but he needs to be a good boy. God, Roche has such a punchable face. Mulder hands Roche the 2 unknown hearts, asking Roche to name them, with Roche responding, you know one of them already. Roche gives them almost exact details of the night, but wants to mess with Mulder, telling him to pick one of the hearts, and if he picks the right one, he'll tell him where Samantha is. Roche gives them the location of one of the bodies, and Mulder just frantically digs into the dirt with his hands. You can just see the fear and anxiety on his face, because this could be his sister, and it's just so heartbreaking. It turns out not to be Samantha, but I don't know if that's better or worse. One of the most disturbing things is how Roche, even after all these years, is still able to give exact details as to what happened on the days he took his victims' lives. And you can even start to see the disgust on Scully's face as he gives her the gruesome details on the latest found victim.
It's your sister.
If that's true, tell me where.
This whole thing is just a game. It's like he takes pleasure in watching Mulder squirm.
You're gonna see the inside of your cell instead. You're gonna rot there.
Even Scully at this point is hurt enough. She knows how much this is affecting Mulder, and I just think she can't see someone she cares about go through this anymore. Mulder does one of the worst things ever when he actually takes Roche out of his lockup so Roche can bring him to Samantha. He's let this thing affect him so much that it's clouded his judgment, and now, even though he's handcuffed, Mulder has allowed a child murderer free.
You having fun?
Now.
What's your name?
Oh my god, just shoot him! Scully tells Skinner what just happened, and Skinner kind of sort of blames her, but she can't watch Mulder all the time. I mean, he's a big boy. Mulder brings Roche to his home in Martha's Vineyard, and Roche begins to describe just what happened that night. He gives Mulder every little detail about what happened, but makes one fatal error.
Wrong house. My father bought this house after he and my mother divorced. This house is in West Tisbury. The house that Samantha was abducted from is in Chilmark.
Here's where things get interesting. Somehow, and may I remind you, this is the X-Files, Roche was able to get inside Mulder's dreams, like Mulder was able to get inside Roche's mind when profiling him. So that's how he knew all the little details, except Dummy didn't get the house right. With that off Mulder's chest, he's bringing Roche back to the prison in the morning. That night, while asleep, Mulder dreams his sister is locked in Roche's car, but manages to free her with the keys. This whole thing was just Roche toying with Mulder and tricking him into unlocking his handcuffs. Mulder kinda sorta screwed the pooch on this one, and now there's a child predator back on the streets.
How do you explain yourself, Agent Mulder?
I don't.
You don't. A predator is loose because of you. God only knows how many hours lead he's got.
Mulder does have an idea where Roche could be headed because he did get a little too friendly with a little girl on the plane. When Mulder calls the airport to find out who the little girl is, it seems another Agent Mulder already did the exact same thing. Yeah, Roche has his ID and his gun. This lousy daycare worker just allowed Roche to take the little girl because he flashed his badge and claimed he was Mulder. And I can kinda see how she could make that mistake. I mean, Roche looks almost identical to the photo in Mulder's badge.
Roche's old address in the area. Revere, 9809 Alice Road, apartment number 6.
there.
How do you know?
Alice in Wonderland. He's the Mad Hatter.
Mulder thinks Roche brought the young girl to his old apartment, but when they get there, it looks like it's been abandoned for years. Of course, Roche wouldn't be living there because he's been in prison, but you're telling me they haven't rented it out since he was put away? Mulder notices a lot of abandoned buses across from the apartment and figures Roche took the girl there. Mulder finds Roche and the young girl in one of the buses after she screams, and things get very tense. Even completely surrounded, Roche still sees this entire thing as a game, using Samantha as a means to get at Mulder. Finally! This should have happened the moment we met this piece of trash. Unfortunately though, this means Roche takes the final victim to his grave. No one will ever know who the little girl was, and despite Scully's reassurance that it wasn't Samantha based on some lab results about the fabric, I'm not sure that will ever take away the thought that it could be her. Paper Hearts is an excellent episode that just boils my blood when I watch it. It does bear some similarities to the episode Aubrey, with prophetic dreams leading to unsolved murders, but I think it does a much better job with the concept. The success of the episode largely comes down to Tom Noonan's performance as John Lee Roche. I think the episode would still be good whether or not he was in it, but I think his performance really pushes it over the top. Tom is an underrated character actor and is really good at playing villains, from his role in RoboCop 2, or the underrated Last Action Hero, or even the small horror film The House of the Devil. He always elevates whatever he's in. I would have to put him on par with someone like Brad Dourif, who took the material they were given for the episode and only made it that much better. Vince Gilligan was the writer for this episode, and he has a knack for writing the more human monsters in the show, from Robert Patrick Modell to Gary Schnauz and now John Lee Roche. Vince would often have very interesting dreams, but claims they never had any impact on what he wrote. He did, however, feel that the show needed to go back to its longest running storylines, which was the abduction of Samantha. Vince came up with the idea that what if instead of aliens abducting her, it was instead a child predator. On top of this idea, he also decided to add in prophetic dreams that would lead Mulder down this path. Like the previous Donnie Pfaster, Gilligan also wanted to add some kind of fetish aspects to the story, but not necessarily one as graphic as amputating body parts from his victims and bringing them home, but a fetish that was more psychological. On the subject, Gilligan said, "Originally, I had an idea that the killer would take the actual hearts of the victims, but I thought about that for 5 minutes or so, and I thought that would be going way too far. It would have been just too gross. No one would want to see that. I wouldn't want to see that." So instead, he came up with a much more metaphorical cloth hearts that the killer would take from his victims' clothing. Gilligan felt Roche was one of the most depraved characters he had ever written. An evil, evil, black-hearted guy who was a child kidnapper and murderer. Gilligan knew only Tom Noonan could bring such a demonic character to life. The wonderful thing Tom Noonan did in this episode, which was so effective, was that he played the role so matter-of-factly. He is so wonderfully understated that it literally sends a chill down my spine every time I see this episode. And I have to agree with Gilligan here, because Tom Noonan is so creepy in the role and finds this way to give you the chills and boil your blood at the same time. Tom Noonan saw his character as something of a soulmate with Mulder, someone he connected with. On his role, Tom said, Mulder was Roche's soulmate, a guy he felt he could really connect with. When he'd say something about Samantha or his other victims and Mulder would get upset, he'd think, "What are you upset about? This is our life together." Another standout in the episode is the music. Anytime the laser is shown on the screen, there's almost this ethereal quality. It feels like something you'd hear in a fantasy setting, but it adds a nice touch to the dream sequences. Mark Snow is actually nominated for an Emmy for his music in Paper Hearts, and credits Felix Mendelssohn's A Midsummer Night's Dream as inspiration. Mark also claimed he had been asked about releasing a physical copy of the song for purchase, but because the piece was only around 30 seconds long, he figured it would be pointless. The idea for the lasers came from Gilligan's experience working for a company that made custom laser holograms back when he was attending New York University. In the original script, the color of the laser was supposed to be blue, but because blue lasers have a shorter wavelength, and I'm not a laserologist, so I'm assuming the camera can't pick it up as easily, they instead decided to go with a red laser, which is easier and less costly to use. The effect of the laser changing into various words was simply done in post-production with computers. It's actually surprising to learn that the dot was a real laser at all. I would have guessed the entire thing would just be computer effects. Hilariously, first assistant director Tom Braidwood, aka Frohickey, took the fire decal off the El Camino after filming and placed them on the front of his Ford Taurus, which apparently really pissed off his wife. Also, the ending of the episode in the bus graveyard was a location that had been scouted the season prior. They were looking for an excuse to use it, and once they sent photos to Vince Gilligan, he thought it would be an interesting setting to end the episode, so he wrote it into the script. Paper Hearts is a really good episode and sits at 8.7 on IMDb. I'm a really big fan of this one, and even watching it for the millionth time, I still get sucked into the whole thing. I'm probably going to give this one a 9, which is a rare for me. But Tom Noonan is so good in his role, and David's acting is much better too, especially when compared to something like The Field Where I Died. Well, we go from one of Season 4's high points to what I consider to be one of Season 4's low points, as Mulder and Scully investigate a strange illness that may be caused by the legendary cryptid, the Chupacabra, in the episode El Mundo Gira. So what do you think of Paper Hearts? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, that's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video and stay spooky.
23 years ago, his sister vanished. But this Sunday...
You want to know everything.
Tell me where my sister is.
I can't just tell you. You need me to show you.
one man could unlock the mystery.
Do you believe that my sister Samantha was abducted by aliens?
The X-Files. A brand new episode Sunday at 9, 8 Central.